Hi, hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining and welcome to today's Society 3 Deep Innovation Design Knowledge Transfer Series. See many familiar names already who joined our last webinar. My name is Marita Schulze, co-founder of the Society 3 Group and chair of the World Innovations Forum Foundation. And today, again, your host and moderator. Before we start, please allow me to share a few housekeeping. There is no need to do any screenshots. We will record the webinar and make it available in the next days on the Society 3 webpage. If you have any questions, please feel free to just type them into the question box in the GoToWebinar control panel. We will do our best to answer all of them at the end of the webinar or follow up with you directly via email. Let me now introduce you please to Axel Schulze, founder and CEO of Society 3 Group AG and also chairman of the World Innovations Forum. Hi, Axel. Axel started and successfully exited 4 companies. The biggest reached 5 billion in revenue, the second close to 1 billion. Axel is also a published author and patent holder. 2015 listed in the Global 100 Most Influential Startup Accelerators. 2008, Axel won the San Francisco Entrepreneur Award. 2006, he chaired the SAS Channel Committee at the SIA in the US and also was an early advisor in 2003 at LinkedIn. Axel and I, we lived the majority of our business life in Silicon Valley. For the past years, Axel is on a quest to find out how the brain is creating and processing ideas and how some of those ideas could become disruptive to an entire industry segment. Okay, Axel, without further ado, please take over.
All right, thank you very much, Marita. And also hello from my side, and thanks for joining us in our second episode of the Deep Innovation Design Knowledge Transfer Series. And today we want to talk about innovation opportunity discovery. So let me start real quick because that was a request actually from our previous webinars. I should have introduced Society 3, which probably I should have. We're too shy to make it not kind of a promotion event. But I try to do it in 60 seconds. So Society 3 today is basically a innovation management systems company. We're developing an IMS system and focusing on enterprises. And this is actually our background. For most of our lives, and if I say ours, is basically Marita and myself. We founded 4 companies. We have been in the enterprise space. Blue Roads in Silicon Valley was a software as a service company. And so this is our kind of our world before we started startups to help be innovative too. We helped about 100 startups to get to an innovation stage and build a disruptive business model. Over time, we realized that we had, so to speak, the qualities and the sensitivity when is a business model actually disruptive, and we finally started to build a whole methodology around it. Now, innovation and innovation design is obviously also an ever bigger topic for corporates, and mainly because these startups, they come out of nowhere and all of a sudden move big time into market and actually can displace a large chunk of the business of a corporation, maybe hundreds of thousands of employees. And so we didn't want to help corporates to kill startups, but we also didn't want to help startups to kill corporates. And so we thought, if we're all working together, it may be actually a much better outcome for us as a society. And so deep innovation design has become a methodology that we created and has these so-called neural ideation process or model at its core. And this started, and those of you who had been with us on the first webinar, started actually out with a new understanding how our brain actually composes and processes ideas. And that again has been latest discoveries from the neuroscience world, where we realized now we kind of understand why ideas are actually happening the way they happen, where they're coming from, and why it's so theoretically extremely difficult to come up with groundbreaking innovation. And that is our definition of innovation in general. Groundbreaking meaning, radically new. It's not just an improvement or a little bit of a much better product, but still it's the same kind of product. Now, innovation is a groundbreaking shift. And so we're helping basically companies with half day all the way to 6 week, and actually there's even a 6-month training to get the teams aware of how our brain machine actually works in terms of ideation and idea creation. But when we create new ideas in a very different way than in the past, where it's basically experimentation and figuring it out and try and error and pivoting and all these things, we leave that path and actually focused on dedicated, purposeful innovation. And that comes out at innovation on demand at the end of the day. With that shift, actually the whole innovation process has changed. And so here we are with basically a new company, even though we have been working in this space before, but I think we can say we disrupted ourselves, radically. Everything we do now basically threw everything we did in the past, so to speak, overboard. And that's the 60, probably 90 seconds of Society 3 and what we do. And as we promised today, we want to take one of these segments of these methods that we're doing, innovation opportunity discovery, and talk about this today. We talked about the general approach of the ideation already last time, and I will do a very quick recap of the past, so to speak, of the past webinar, so that everybody who has not been there can actually pick up pretty quickly. So the agenda for today is a recap, and then we want to explore the areas of innovation, because if we understand how actually ideas are created, our entire approach to ideation and ideation development, and therefore innovation, will change. All the wonderful innovation management systems that are out there are all built around the idea that you try to find out what the market wants and so on. Then you try to find out a great idea. You might even get the market to tell you the right ideas, and then you can build it, and then you bring it to market again. But if we're understanding why and where ideas actually coming from, that process is shifting. So we want to identify customers and their challenges, and this in itself is a challenge if you have a large market. We will talk about that. We will talk about in-person video interviews, because surveys in the classical way would not work for our purposes. We look at the interview structure, and we call it dream catcher. How do we get the dreams of the customers, not just the needs, not just their ideas, but really their big dreams, because they can dream big too. And then the information review process, and then there comes something very important, the executive presentation. Most corporate innovation attempts fail because the innovative team cannot communicate appropriately, or probably a different word, best, let's say, to the executives, so that they can actually understand why that innovation that they're coming up with or came up with is actually of utmost importance for the company. One thing is missing, it's the missing link of the experiences, and we'll talk about this today. So, but let me just do a quick recap from the last webinar. We talked about there is no magical idea, and there is no spark that all of a sudden hits your brain for some unknown reason, and you come up with this radical innovative idea. Doesn't exist, doesn't happen, so there is a different reason. The reason why it can't happen is that we cannot create. And if you cannot create, you cannot create an idea out of nothing. So what we're doing, and this is pretty well kind of captured in this picture here, these little golden colored balls, these are the end pieces, or these are actually the neuron cells. and they contain information. And we have 86 billion of them in our brain. And we have another 4 trillion synapses that actually make the connection between one and the other happening. And with this amount of data processing in our brain, we can actually compose ideas of previous experiences. And you may have remembered the little test we did. Come up with some creative idea around a platypus and lexicrypt. And this was not possible because lexicrypt does not exist. And if there is something that does not exist, we cannot create something around something that we don't know, period. And so all of our ideas, I mean, every new idea ever created was actually composed of experiences that we have in our brain, in our mind, from whatever we had in our lives. And with this understanding, our entire understanding of the magic ideas of innovation shifts dramatically, because now we understand that the ideas are actually little bits and pieces of information that we have already experienced somewhere or the other. And if we're getting an idea from a refrigerator and take this and do something entirely different, but sort of something similar, then this is because we have that experience. And if we wouldn't have the experience of refrigerator, we couldn't do the other thing. So with that, we know how our brain sort of kind of works. And the more we work on this, and I've talked to a couple of people, I mean, who are working with us for a while now, they said, no, I see all these things that you're telling us, and it's amazing. I mean, I listen to neuroscientists, and obviously they are focusing on, you know, all the damages that our brain could have, and not on the positive side. But yeah, it becomes actually logical. And so when we understand, then we can understand also how we stimulate things. And this is not brain training, you know, like you had possibly in the past. It's actually stimulation. And out of the stimulation understanding comes probably the most profound shift in our understanding of our brain and our imagination, that if we cannot create in all and everything we imagine, and it may be the wildest dream, can only happen if we had the experiences before. You cannot dream, I mean, physically impossible, about something where there was no experience about any content of your dream before in your life. It's physically impossible because our neurons, they don't have eyes and ears and do some, you know, life on their own. They only work with all the experiences that you have. That means when we go out and try to innovate, we need to get the experiences that our customers have. And we need to transform these experiences in an innovation idea with a team and their experiences to something entirely new. And the power comes from the team working all together on experiences. And now we understand maybe a little bit, it's early on, but you will see when you work with it for a while, that we can convince our executives only if we can transform the experience that we had with our customers on their problems in one way or the other to our executives, that they realize, yeah, I see, okay, and there's 5 million people who have the same problem, and there's probably 10 million in other countries or 100 million. Ooh, that is an interesting idea. But if you just tell them sort of some market data and other things that they hear every day and not the experience itself, it's very difficult to make, you know, I mean, 100 million for a new innovation available for the entire journey. And 100 million is actually nothing. If you look at startups, they take 100 million if they're successful easily. Some take 1 billion, others take actually, I think that the biggest, the richest startup in the world is a Chinese company with 47 billion valuation. But that also means that a lot of people actually paid at least a chunk of those 47 billion in order to participate. So let me go into innovation opportunity discovery and take all the knowledge that we gathered so far about how deep innovation design works and how our mind works, and now translate this in a piece of a process. So we need to know our terrain. That was the promise from the last session, and the understanding the needs and the dreams of our audience. We need to understand what they're needing and wanting, but also what they're dreaming about. Today's average corporate tries to meet the needs as best as possible with a minimum effort to get there. And this will, per definition, never ever be an innovation. So if we're not trying to get their dreams to make this leap into the next generation, we will not be able to innovate. And that is done by the startups. And I've had for myself, and I said earlier, we helped over 100 others and worked with probably around 1,000. But always we try to meet and get out the dreams. This was never done strategically or methodical, but this was this is how we did it. But when we realized this is always part of the success story, and never a success happened without that, we realized we have to do it. And it doesn't matter whether this is a startup or not. So here is an experience situation. So this lady works on this table saw, and when she has some sort of trouble one way or the other that this doesn't, the saw, when you turn it off, it still runs for a while. It doesn't break. All table saws do that. Nobody came up with an idea saying, okay, click the button and there's a magnet and the disc is standing immediately. Here's an idea. Doesn't cost anything. But I have a table saw myself, and I saw this lady and I thought, that's a brave one. I mean, it is a kind of dangerous machine because many people lost their fingers and so forth. So why not thinking beyond the ordinary? So in this very case, with this experience, now if you would get to your boss and say, okay, our creative idea, our innovation is, and we make a patent on it, is an instant break of the saw discs. When they turn it off, stands right away, and there's no problem to actually do that. There are a couple of people, and this is where I got the idea myself, to take a little piece of wood and actually put it somewhere on the saw and just stop it, just to be sure that it's done. So things like that can only be created when you, as an innovator, have the experience of what the risk and what the problem might be. And if you look back in time of Travis coming up with the idea of Uber, all the way back to Carl Benz, who created the automobile, and everybody right and left and before and thereafter, all the way back 300,000 years when we developed the very first true innovation, putting a sharp stone on a stick and made the first spear. It came only because we threw stones and we threw sticks, and somebody tried it out and said, well, if we take this and that, it must be better. But if they never would throw a spear, an ape never did, therefore they cannot have the experience of developing this further. So experience is absolutely key. And this is also why we move this topic of customer experience, continuously into the process of innovation, because this is the department in every large corporation, assuming, these days almost everybody has a customer experience group. They are a perfect source for innovative inputs, not necessarily for the innovation itself, but the inputs. So we need to explore a variety of situations, because now, since we're able to innovate on demand, we could innovate instantly, probably on 1,000 or 10,000 aspects of a corporation, make it all better. But the CEO and the CFO would say, sorry, no way in heaven. We can do a lot, but that is what we cannot do. So therefore, it's important to find the area of innovation where you say, okay, these are troublesome. Innovation desperately needed. This may be some situation coming out of the market telling you, well, this is really bad, and I heard somebody is actually doing it. So then innovation is desperately needed. Or there are open doors for others to disrupt your market, actually even some industry segments. And if you know that there is some, well, you're better off, considering make the innovation yourself rather than let others innovate. It may be known problems in the field that your internal support organization knows for a long time, but yeah, nobody knows how to really do it, and this is costly, and this is experimentation, and if we change this, maybe this changes too, and then that changes also, and then it's all screwed up, and everything was organized so well, so we'll leave it as is because the competition does the same. And this is why most corporates are actually not unable to innovate, but incapable to make the decision where to innovate. And that is something, as part of this new understanding, it comes also with it that we need to develop this ability to find out where to innovate. Speak to customer relationship people to find out what customers want, or we talk actually to internal groups to find out that our production is not very efficient. And people know, but yeah, they said the boss, but the boss's boss already filtered it, and the boss's boss knows there is no budget, and then their boss said, I don't even want to talk about this, and the next one doesn't even know. And so these types of, we call it also innovation trees, are in every single company. And so either you talk to your internal team about the customer, or your internal team about internal projects or problems, or you go directly to the end users. And if you go directly, then speak with them, select some 100 or some thousands or some 10,000s to find out what they really need and dream. And so this comes oftentimes as a new challenge, where I know for a fact from working with enterprises on this particular topic that they're actually in a way kind of stagnating. They don't know. I mean, they say we have millions of customers. I mean, we can't talk to them all. And sometimes we don't even have access to the customer base because all the products get sold through all kinds of dealer channels and a retailer and broker and so on. We don't know who our customers are. Well, but if you don't know, I mean, you have to admit that you cannot innovate. There is no way in heaven. If you don't know for whom and what you innovate, this is just random experimentation. And if you get disrupted, then it's because of that. So you can talk to a customer advisory board. I mean, most companies probably have that. Most employees internally don't even know, but it exists somewhere. Well, these are small groups and not necessarily the best groups, because they have innovation related information for a long time already, and they're long-time customers, and they're probably not the latest generation that actually want to embrace some innovation. You can go through support records. This is one way to find problems, but probably the best way is reach out through social media channels, active communication to your audience, and make some cool campaign. Doesn't matter, but reach out to the people in the web. And usually they're somewhere between 20 and 35 and 40. So they're young enough to have actually a very clear understanding and a very clear dream how this should be, and not how was it like 20 or 30 years ago. I mean, who cares? I mean, yes, there is a generation that says, don't touch it. I finally got my arms around it. Now I can use it, and I don't want to have a new version of it or a new product. Okay, so you're actually forced as an organization to build a secondary category of products that is for this target audience. And I mean, every company works towards a target audience. If you have two different target audiences, you need two different products. And that means also that diversity is king. If you don't have a diverse customer access, you will not catch those who are actually in need and want and dream of innovation the most. And this is where most customers, or most companies, sorry, are actually losing their customers. And if this goes on for 5 to 10 years, there's probably no way to catch up again. I mean, there's almost any company that you know in the tech space or in the pharmaceutical space, if they're not inventing continuously, it's just happening that they're losing more and more market share. So how to reach out to 1% of the 10 million customers? That would be 100,000. And the 10 million, I was working, there's one car manufacturer who was last year, they produced 11 million cars. So that equates to about 11 million users, whether they're direct customers or indirect customers through some corporations, doesn't matter. But there are 10 million or 11 million people. If you get to 1%, it's not a lot, but it's enough actually for this kind of exercise. So that's 100,000. Now, if you do 25 video interviews per day, as a savvy telemarketing type person, and get a little bit of extra training for doing this particular interview, then you can do about 500 per month. And that means you need 200 people. And in 1 month, the whole story is done, 100,000 customers. All you need to do is mimic actually a logic that when people are interested to speak with you, that there is somebody available, and there's tools and techniques around that you basically make online digitally appointments, and you can collect 100, maybe leave it for 2 months, so double the time, you get to 100,000 people. And if you remember or know how political campaigns are run, and not just in the US, in almost any country, I mean, it's direct contact to most of the people in this country. And this, in the US, you have to reach about 280 million people as influencers to your campaign. And that's a lot of people in a very short period of time. So this is possible, and this is possible, as easy as piece of cake. Now, when we have the idea of how to reach them, then we want to do in-person, I would say in parentheses, video interviews. Many should be done personally, face-to-face, but these days, we go video anyway, and by now everybody is used to do video interviews or video conferences and so on. So that's fine. But it needs a couple well-trained people, because they need to be perfect listeners and observers. The listening and observation skills are really key, because it's not just listening orally, okay, this is what they said, but also finding when they say, I find it pretty interesting that this works, and yeah, I'll use it once in a while. But this feature, this is very cool. I use this very often. This means use both, but in the voice alone is a very different story. There's something they use because it's there. If it wouldn't be there, they probably wouldn't use it. But there's something else that is very powerful and very important to them. So the perfect observation and the perfect listening skill is the best, for this type of interview. And also local language skills. I mean, this, probably everybody here knows that you call a service center, and on the other side, you have somebody who's kind of speaking your language, but just kind of. Sometimes they speak very well, but they don't understand what you say, because what you're trying to tell them is so foreign to them that they don't know what it is and what you're talking about. They just say, yeah, no problem, and I'll ask the supervisor, and then you go on and on and on. So local language skills is important. And then basic customer work experience. And that's probably the hardest part. So if you go back to the chainsaw or to this table saw, and this is sort of the object that we may want to get to, but probably at this stage don't even know, because we're doing innovation discovery. So we need to have actually people skilled with what your company does. If this is an automobile company, everything around automobiles, not necessarily a particular car, not necessarily just the brakes, but everything around automobile. At least have a basic understanding, or power tools, or pharmaceuticals, or medical equipment. I mean, whatever it is. So your video interviewer, as you can see now, gets a little step by step more skilled, or the skills are required. So it's observation skills, it's listening skills, local language skills, is experience, and then conversational skills. Because when the other side starts to telling you a story, then it's important that you ask them once in a while, how do you see that? Or how do you see that? All this is done by typical, very well-educated salespeople. They may be too expensive for this task, but then when you look at what an innovation process actually costs, a new product, let's say a new car, just the development cost, it's about $7 billion. And if you start even earlier, then all the knowledge that is accumulated to make this happen, you're ending up with 10 or $20 billion. So if you try to find out what the dreams and the needs of your customers is, and you have even good salespeople and convince them they need a help for this particular case, you pay them what you have to pay them anyway. And this is nothing compared to the outcome. If you look into most R&D centers, into most so-called innovation labs or innovation centers, they're moving around 10, 20, 30, 50 people since years. And the yield in terms of true innovation is in most of the cases actually zero. They have their own building, they have their own equipment, they have their own logistics, they have everything. I mean, wonderful, clearly. We didn't know otherwise. So this is all fair that this is happening. But that was a waste of money. With the exception, we learned that this didn't work. And so we need to motivate at the end of this conversation the customer again for a second interview. And I will tell you in a minute why. But only these two interviews, because you get the needs, but you probably don't get the dreams. These two interviews are actually strategic to get further. So the structure, again, this is not an interview where I have 25 questions, and you have probably bothered by so many marketing organizations. You may ask for your opinion, and I have only 25, or even only 7 or 10 questions. Others come with 40 questions and more. No, there should be only one question. If you would be the CEO or the CEO's advisor, what would you just suggest to do first, given that whatever you think is the problem is the biggest problem on earth? And people come up with ideas. They know, okay, if I would be in power, I would do this and that. And whatever they do, this might be relatively sort of minor compared to the, what a CEO does in a corporation. It would be probably sort of just the tip of the iceberg. But that is where we start to find out what is actually triggering or bothering, what is exciting or frustrating our customers. And again, this is almost, with variations, but this is almost, customer experience 101. So then you can record the interview and you make additional notes, and please catch the emotional and audible peaks, meaning, okay, this was very important for that person. That was very dramatic, positive or negative. This was very exciting or very frustrating. And so alongside with the audible, so the transcript, you cannot read all these emotions. So they need to be in extra notes. And if you have a video conference, obviously you could help others review the video. But that is a problem, at least today, because if we need to do a video analysis by machines, then this will be very complicated. We can do pretty well on audio, but not on video. And therefore, we have to record it and then have later on, as you will see, a machine actually go through 100,000 of these information pieces. So like I said earlier, so the next step then would be the dream catcher interview. And this is where we want to get the dreams of the customer. Not the personal dreams, but the dreams related to your product, to your company, to the business, to what they're doing, to what they're doing otherwise in their business. And try to catch them as good as you can. And when you tell them in your first interview, we would love, wonderful, everything cool, love to work with you again. We have a second interview planned, and you get, whatever, chocolate or cake or cookie or something when you do it. because we want to better understand what you would do maybe if you had 100 years time, and where would you go? And there are customers who would say, come on, 100 years, I have no time and I have no clue anyway. So please leave. I mean, I'm happy to help you, but this is way beyond. Well, then that is fine too. So then you realize you have somebody who doesn't have long-term perspectives, and you have at least a short-term feedback. And the number of those with a long-term perspective may vary from 50% to 80% or to 20%. And it doesn't matter. But you will get information about what they actually dream about. And these dreams, and they would probably tell you, are not possible anyway, but that would be my dream. And this is another reason why most researchers, market research, even innovation labs and so on, stop because these ideas seem to be not realistic. And we're all educated, we're grown up being, as adults, realistic, because everything else is a waste of time, a waste of money, and crazy anyway. But see, the difference is that all these companies or all these entrepreneurs who built companies with dreams that were literally impossible, were theoretically a waste of time, theoretically a waste of money, came up with ideas that was so-called billion-dollar ideas. When I started Computer 2000, for instance, I mean, there was nobody in my vicinity, I mean, business-wise, let alone personally, who even thought, yeah, that's interesting. There is a slight chance. Hey, if you can do that, this would be amazing. No, everybody said this is impossible. You cannot do this. This will never work. I just had this feeling because I saw literally I could develop step by step these ideas to a point where this must work. And it did work. I mean, obviously we were, the first couple of years were drama, but at the end of the day, it was a $5 billion company, and today it's a $37 billion company based on stupid dreams that seemed to be impossible. Carl Benz's idea was impossible. Alfred Escher here in Switzerland, the idea of building the railroad in Switzerland and so on was impossible. There was no money, there was no need, this was all crazy. People who said, well, we built a telecom system so that we get lots of people mobile phones in Africa. This was a couple of years ago, and I still remember this so well. Everybody, including myself, said, so what a waste of time. How stupid is this? I mean, people need water, sanitation, there's all the other things. There's still not enough water, there's still not good enough sanitation, but there's mobile phones for everybody. But this has driven a market, I mean, unbelievable big. So we need to let people do the unbelievable. And we learned that most of the big ideas were all unbelievable. And now if we go back to our way how the brain actually works, it works so in an extended way that it takes all the experiences that are far-fetched. I mean, literally, they're not close in relation to the actual problem. And that makes these ideas even more unbelievable, because what has this to do with that, and how could this ever work? But at the end of the day, it worked. So we're looking for dreams and to realize true groundbreaking innovation. And again, groundbreaking is radically different. So then we do the review process. We got all this wonderful information from about 100,000 customers. And obviously the number of idea inputs, bits and pieces of information, things that are cool and will not work, things that must work in order to make something else work. These are all little bits of information. I mean, digitally, we would say objects. And we're probably ending up in this case with 1 million objects or more. There's no human on Earth that can ever comprehend 1 million of these objects one way or the other. Impossible. So we need computers. And we realized when we worked on this, before we even thought about building an application, that this will not work. This is also truly impossible. And the only possibility is that we operate on our brain, but we're not far enough yet. The other is to make a computer model and use computers to do that, which we have done in the past already. So we will need a dedicated system for that. And we see already that we have not even started the actual innovation process, but all the data already that we can gather in order to make groundbreaking innovation is big enough to basically need tools to process them. So, but the review process is the interesting part because we will get lots and lots and lots of ideas, connected and disconnected, and we will need to organize them. We need to organize ideas that are basically sort of clustered, similar ideas, even the same ideas, different ideas, completely orthogonal. And then we need to see whether we can connect these clusters of same ideas A with same ideas type B and same ideas type C, if there is a relationship or not. And this process alone gives us so much insight into the, again, needs and dreams of the customer that we could theoretically already start building, but we don't. This is still the gathering process. And you can already imagine if we now have at one point in time real innovative minds who can create now something, I mean, compose something out of these experiences, hundreds, thousands of them, their own and their team, this will be radically innovative. It almost must be, because we have never seen so much brain power in any of the projects before. So the key now is we need to convince executives before that, before we start actually taking the effort of innovating, we need to get the approval to make this happening. And so we need to have an utmost professional presentation, really stylish. Numbers, facts, figures. Executives don't believe in, oh, this would be cool, right? Oof, I don't know. But if you have figures and facts, then this might be different. Then you have this, and this is why it's bold here, a challenge that is, I have to say, we don't have yet the perfect solution. We might need to use our own technology to come up to this radical innovative solution for experience emulation. But we don't even know how we can do it right now, other than making a little video. Parts of the videos are interviews of the customers, and hence the video is actually becoming now even more relevant, and make some cuts and present this to the executives so that they can at least sense the experience that you had and the customers have, basically every day in their lives, and come up with, I mean, not the solution yet, but ideas where it can go. And if you now understand how we build these innovative ideas together, then we can even put a timetable to it. We can talk about resources, we can talk about budgets. And then the last question is, who loses if you win? And that will most likely attract executives to definitely think about it. They may not say, yes, we're going to do that, but they will definitely think about it. So, and I want to show you in this context so that you know where you are with this innovation opportunity discovery and the entire innovation journey map. You see this here. I mean, we have, so to speak, we have developed now a dream team that does the innovation opportunity discovery. The boss says we need to innovate, agrees that there's a couple of people who do that, and we're down here. And this innovation opportunity discovery process or episode is here. And then the next thing is take all this through a deep innovation design process. And this is where we actually start thinking deep. I mean, deep meaning we kind of understand how our neurons work, how they get stimulated and how they get frustrated, how they block information from our creativity side to the logic side and back and forth. And if we do that, we come up with ideas that make something that hasn't been proven yet, scientifically, other than by practice. People say, okay, how could Mercedes, I mean, how could Carl Benz develop a car? And he said himself, if people ask me what to invent, everybody would want to have a feeding machine for the horses because they want to have longer distance, but he developed a car. People would have asked um, um, Steve Jobs, how and why he developed this phone. He would have said, if I would have asked my customers, I would have done something different. And I can relate to it because I had the same experience at Blue Roads. If people would have asked me, and actually they did, can you come up with a better solution on leads, sales lead distribution through distributors and then through their resellers to their end users and so on? And everybody would have said, how we better distribute leads, how we send it out, how we control the feedback and so forth. But at the end, I came up with a different idea. I realized that we can never know who of the resellers and their salespeople in the field. I mean, we had 8,000 resellers, and they had an aggregate on average 10 or sometimes even 100 salespeople. So this would be 80,000, roughly 100,000 salespeople. Even if some guy goes to vacation, I mean, 3 weeks vacation, boom, sales lead on their table, nobody's working on it. So we came to a total different idea. Then we make the sales leads available to a pull methodology. So they can grab it whenever they have time and whenever they are hungry for new opportunities, they can go to the platform, pick them. They could only pick so many. They have to provide feedback before they get new ones. And so the whole methodology case was basically upside down compared to what everybody needed. So how did I come up with this? I had this question 1,000 times, and I would probably not sit here if I wouldn't. And I needed to find out, but I realized this wasn't a special power of my brain or anything like that. It was something very simple. I actually and I found out just about a few years ago, I started to remember. Before that, I found it interesting that we can get all the documents, manuals by simply downloading. Whenever we need a manual, we can download it from the internet. And take in consideration this was in the late 90s, so internet was just popping up. And I thought, why can people not download the leads whenever they want? So it wasn't a magic idea, but the outcome was, profound, because it took this company to become a market leader for channel management software. And so if we look into all the other ideas, it's the same thing. So we want to have the great inputs of needs and dreams, and then put it through a machine that we call deep innovation design. But obviously it's not a machine, it's human beings who can analyze this and discuss this way deeper than ever we've gone before with our typical brainstorm meetings, and actually use the neural ideation process to come up with radical new ideas. And then we go back to idea validation, and this is what we will also talk about in the next couple of webinars, and then disruptive business model and so forth. So as you can see, that even the ideation process is now different once we understand how ideas get created and how we get the inputs. The idea validation process will be also different, because we're not trying to validate a crazy idea. We're actually validating an idea that was sponsored, so to speak, by the audience already. So that validation process will be far simpler and be a much higher degree of probability. And then we go through a disruptive moment check, because we want to build a disruptive business model as well. That's a sort of something else. But now you can see, when we do all that, we have never talked about building a prototype, figuring something out, experimentation. All and everything so far, until we go to the finance guy, was basically intellectual work. And that is the profound difference between the innovation process that we're having now compared to the past. And if we can show what is possible, then we may not need 50 million to build prototypes and everything. We probably need maybe a couple 100,000, maybe 1 million or 2 or 3 to actually go to the market and develop what we call market-born products. And if that works, then we rightfully can ask for 50 million. But a CEO would see that, would have a very different set of arguments if they don't want it than they would have today. Okay, so innovation journey map is one of the pieces that we're kind of as an organization stand for, trying to bring your innovation team to absolute top performance. And when you have been with us in the last session, we compared it with the top performing athletes. Now we want to get top performing brain athletes, so to speak. And we don't need tens and hundreds of thousands. We need, a decent number of people who are actually getting to top performance. And this may, over time, be as many as a couple thousand in a company. We probably need more innovators than anything else in the next couple of years. So we're done so far with innovation opportunity discovery. And clearly I tried to be as fast as possible and get as much as possible across. If we would work on this in a day-to-day project or so, there's probably a gazillion questions, but that's fun, fair and fun. But you get the idea where this goes. And so what we want to do next month, as you know, we do one of these per month, is organizational versus market-facing innovation. There's some interesting differences if you have some innovation to do internally, fix up things that has been, not fixed for years, and or market-facing, where it's a product or product-related product or service that you want to go give to the market. But the organizational innovation became very interesting when we used the new methodology, because there's a lot of room for improvement for far less risks. And every internal change is a risk for every CFO, CMO, CEO, everybody on the C level. And we need and want to reduce this risk. And with the same methodology that we go in the market, with a reduced risk and reduced effort of experimentation to no experimentation, we can do this internally too. And out of these methods basically came sort of three models that we're working on most with current customers. One is a custom corporate webinar. We do similar things like we did right now, basically with our customers, who we basically do an introduction or education about the methodologies, the way how innovation can work now these days, and why it is different than in the past, and so forth. Sort of warm up the teams. And out of this warm up, I think the most interesting part is that there comes already sort of the innovation team who wants to continue, who wants to actually do that, who apply for, can I be in an innovation team? And then, we help, excuse me, we help the HR department figure out, are there the traits and the talents? Because an innovation team is not just skills, there's also some talent. If you don't have listening skills, this can be trained over a longer period of time. But risk taking, for instance, is a very difficult thing on the skill side. So there need to be some traits. The other thing is a pilot project. Goes 6 weeks. We have this as a custom version. We have the same actually on a public version starting, I believe, July 13 is our summer camp, where within 6 weeks, we want to develop groundbreaking innovation. And that's sort of our way of proving that the methodology works 100%. We've not yet failed, so we're proud that we can say that. And we're just about to build up the Innovation Management Academy, where we're having dedicated programs for innovators, innovation managers, also innovation executives. We have even a C-level training where, C-level people don't often like to be trained, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing. We help them understand how this all works. They don't need to be an innovator, but they need to know what they can ask for in their organization from an innovator and from an innovation manager and the innovation team. Okay. Yeah, this is basically my part. So, oops, coming back here. Thank you very much. I'll go back to this. So in case there are questions, usually I probably may need this. So I give it back to Marita.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you very much. Yeah, we got some questions from our audience. Myself. Okay, so we got some questions from our audience, Axel. One was, I understand you do customer interviews to learn what they want, but isn't that a real risk that somebody comes up with something fundamentally different?
So yes and no. Going back to the example of Blue Roads. So people told me what they want, and I did something very different. And this is a part of the process that most top innovators did as entrepreneurs, because they got so many insights and inputs and could actually process them to a summary of inputs that where the solution is very different than the request. And so and this comes back to talent. So let me go back to my innovation journey map. You know, when we have here at this stage everything, you know, on this blow curve here, everything we need to know from customers, and everybody would say, okay, we need a horse feeding machine. And one way is to say, okay, we'll build a horse feeding machine. But the other way is the question then, when we understand from so many people, because we cannot go long distance with our horses, then people may come up with new ways of doing long distance. And in Carl Benz's version of this very question is actually interesting, because he was just experimenting on one of his wagons where he had the horses in front of, and he ignited a little bit of petrol, but he ignited it in a way that actually exploded. So it was an accident, but the explosion pushed the car forward, and this was just a drop. So he realized if we can do many drops and we can even steer it, I mean, sort of the short version of it, then we can go long distance. And so this is how the car was actually developed. And we see many of these. I mean, if I wouldn't have seen downloading brochures and PDFs from the web, I wouldn't have changed the lead management system, because this experience would have not existed to make the other solution, the pull methodology that we did. And so the risk is still there. I totally agree with you. But this is why we have this idea validation process, to when we come up with something that we validate with the very same customer who requested actually, you know, their needs or even their dreams, and say, hey, you know, we have something, it's different, but would you like that? And you know, if this is good, then this is good. And if it's bad, then, you know, full stop here, and, you know, back to the drawing board. Yeah.
Thanks, Axel. Another question was, some customers may have grand visions, but most won't want, so is it worth the effort?
Yeah, that is a very good one too, because the grand visions are typically impossible. So if my grand vision would be that this, you can see it here, this is my clock, so I'm timing myself, it would hover in the air here, about here. So it's not in the camera, but it always is in my view, because there is no watch on the screen here. Yeah, that would be an impossible situation today, because we still have not figured out how we trick gravity. But interestingly enough, having this hovering object is so interesting for so many people and for so many scientists. I'm sure that they will find out one day that a hovering object in the air would be possible. I mean, we can probably find out very different ways. You know, do a little prop and make it like a drone or something like that. The noise would be bad. But these ridiculous, impossible sort of situations are, you know, in a way, the true proof of innovation. Because if it's not possible, then it's also not possible for your competition. But if you start working on it and continue to work on it, and you will finally get it done, then you will be the innovator, and everybody's thinking, I mean, this was impossible just 10 years ago. Look at what he did. And there's another interesting example is actually NASA and Enterprise, the spaceship Enterprise, with their blue science, the propulsion engine. It didn't exist. It was just an idea, and it was completely ridiculous and impossible to do. But Propulsion Lab found out ways to actually make it happen. The inspiration was good enough, and their knowledge about engines and turbines and jets and the way the universe is actually built with not having anything the rocket goes against, we're very close. So we will probably, instead of taking 3 to 5 years to Mars, 9 months. I mean, that's still the goal. And some people said we will come to a point where we do this in 3 months and maybe even 2 months and maybe even in 1 month. And we'll probably sail to Mars in 1 month, 1 day. But there are steps in between. So having that vision and going against the vision is, for many people, a waste of time and a waste of resources. But there are few enough to actually do that. And this is what actually drove humanity to the point where we are. Obviously we can debate whether this is good or not, but we all don't want to go back, and we will fix our problems. I mean, we always did. And so, the waste of time, impossible situations, I believe, is actually worth following, because that is where innovation ends at the end of the day.
Thank you. With that comes a very great question also, I have to say. Do you ever step back from boiling the ocean solutions, or let them play out at the risk of finding a true disruptive solution?
Oh, wow. Okay, this is a tough one. I mean, we all, including myself, have learned, trained, don't boil the ocean. But I have to say, I never fully subscribe to this concept. I mean, obviously, we don't want to boil the ocean. I mean, literally, of course. But if we would have to, for whatever reason, I wouldn't shy away from boiling the ocean. And I think I never did. And if you look at all these peers of mine, I mean, if you talk to Mark Benioff and would ask him, would you shy away from boiling the ocean? He would laugh at you and say, never ever. And I think depending on the situation, people would say, sure, this would be too much. But I think we should not shy away from boiling the ocean, but we would need to be careful of A, what we try to do, and B, the consequences, the meaning of what we're trying to do. And this is an interesting responsibility of all innovators, because if our brain can compose things that are ridiculous and we can actually then make it, not everything is positive. And so that's one of the balance we probably have to have. This is why we're, like in our organization, in the foundation and the World Innovations Forum, we're very keen on and say that we're looking for innovation that are society relevant. And sometimes it's hard to actually judge whether it's society relevant now and in the future or not. But I think we all need to very much take care of our planet, which we haven't done too well in the past. So I believe and I trust we will in the future, and we will fix problems that we caused in the past. Yeah, it's a balance act, no question. Yeah.
Thanks. So the last question for you today, thank you so much for asking. It's about how are the corporate webinars different to the ones like we have today?
Okay. Yeah. So there is a difference in the difference vary. So some of our customers said, no, we want exactly that. And we do that. And the only difference is that we align it a little bit more in everything what we're talking, all the examples very much to the industry or to the business they're running it. Typically we get insights of where they already want to stimulate innovation, and so that's what we do, and we do it differently in length. I mean, in 45 minutes, I hope I could do as good as possible in terms of the innovation opportunity discovery. If I would have 3 hours, I could have done more. And if I would have a day, I mean, I could easily fill this as well. So this is sort of the variables where we differ. And sometimes we had one session or one customer was the first, and sort of depending on their audience, they wanted us to do certain things or don't mention certain other things to not confuse them or shy them away from the whole innovation topic. Totally open to that. Yeah.
Okay, with that, I'd like to thank you very much. It was a great pleasure being with you today. On our website, you will find all the dates for the future Society 3 webinars. Would be great if you share it also with your colleagues, with your peers. And on behalf of the Society 3, thank you so much for joining. Have a great rest of your day and please stay safe. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you also from my side. Hope to see you soon, one way or the other. Thanks.